The President of the United States is on the move. He is the leader of the most powerful nation in the world, and yet he is one of us. We expect that wherever he goes, we can turn out to meet him and shake his hand. We expect that he can move freely among us. There's an extraordinary group of people who are trained to make that happen, but they live with a constant fear.
I used to think, what's the worst thing that could happen when I'm out with the president?
I'm gonna blow up the president. We're gonna kill him. He's dead, okay?
You don't read about them and you don't hear about them, you don't discuss them because they may encourage others, but there's always threats on the life of a president.
Assassins have attacked 1 out of every 4 of our presidents. They have killed 1 out of every 10.
Go to your country, try to stay alive.
The president moves in a bubble, a bulletproof bubble, and when it moves, everything moves out of its way. Everywhere he goes, every move he makes is anticipated, monitored, tracked, and shadowed by the men and women who have sworn to protect him at any cost. The United States Secret Service.
It's a necessary evil to have 24-hour protection.
You're operating in an arena where there's no margin for error.
Today, the threat spectrum is wider and more lethal than ever. The president is a moving target, and the Secret Service is his moving shield. Now, find out what it's like to be the shield, to work inside the bubble. Go in the field with the Secret Service as they secure a major presidential event and as they hit the campaign trail with the man who wants to be president. Train for one of the toughest jobs in the country. See inside an elite investigative operation that identifies and eliminates threats before they happen. Walk the rope line. Scan the crowds. Meet the agents who know the past can repeat itself at any moment. Go inside the Secret Service. The president is leaving the safety of the White House, as he does several times a week and hundreds of times a year. But a presidential trip is never routine. Any visit outside the White House requires hundreds of people, thousands of hours, and enough communication and security equipment to outfit an army. Since the president travels constantly, the Secret Service is always a step ahead, preparing, what they call advancing, several sites at a time. This team is advancing Baton Rouge, while other teams are on the ground advancing sites in Texas, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Everywhere the president goes, the security bubble goes too. The Secret Service has 5 days to secure this site, the arena at Louisiana State University, where President Bush will deliver the commencement address. For the advanced team, it's a challenging site to control, with over 14,000 seats and more than 100 entrances. The preparation is mind-boggling. The security advance begins here with Kim Tate, special agent in charge of the New Orleans field office. The key to success at any location is working hand in hand with the state and local police.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to find myself in a room filled with seasoned professionals. I'm Kim Tate.
They discuss every aspect of the trip, assess every danger, Has anyone in the area threatened the president? Have gun sales surged? Have any police uniforms been stolen? To prevent an attack, they have to get inside the heads of the attackers.
So I have a map here. What I want to talk about right now, while we're all here, is the motorcade route coming from the airport.
The team maps out the most secure route for the motorcade,
Out to Veterans Boulevard brings us to Harding.
identifies potential sniper positions, pinpoints safe houses along the way, locates the nearest hospitals, and arranges for the president to have his own blood supply.
From here to Government Street.
Nothing will be left to chance.
4-lane or divided highway.
When your mission is to protect the president, you don't underestimate the enemy. The chilling fact is that someone has always wanted to kill the president. In 1835, President Andrew Jackson's life was spared when shots from a madman's guns misfired. Abraham Lincoln was shot and killed at a theater. James Garfield was killed by an insane man at a train station. Despite the attacks, Americans were reluctant to authorize protection. The very idea of a presidential guard reeked of monarchy and seemed undemocratic. But at the turn of the century, shortly after President William McKinley was assassinated by an anarchist, Congress finally charged the Secret Service with presidential protection. Even then, their authorization had to be renewed annually. 50 years later, a brutal gun battle in front of the president's house settled the question of permanent protection once and for all. The year is 1950, a time when anyone could stroll down Pennsylvania Avenue, even the President of the United States. November 1st. The White House is still under renovation, and President Truman is living across the street at Blair House. Standing guard outside the president's front door is Secret Service agent Floyd Boring. – 2:15 p.m. Two men approach the front steps. Oscar Callazo, a Puerto Rican nationalist, approaches from the east. Rogelio Torsola approaches from the west.
A man came to the front of the Blair House, and he pulled out a gun.
Boring opens fire, driving him away from the front door. At the same moment, the second assailant opens fire at the guardhouse, hitting Secret Service Private Leslie Kofelt. Kofelt, badly wounded, struggles to his feet, takes aim, and shoots the second assailant.
Torsello had been shot through the ears, right one ear right out the other. They died right on the spot.
27 shots were fired during the violent gun battle. 3 hit Leslie Kofelt. He died later that night, the first Secret Service officer to be killed by an assassin. Outraged by the brazen daylight attack, Congress sent President Truman a bill that would give him permanent protection. Pen in hand, he said, "It's wonderful to know that the work of protecting me has, at last, become legal." The bloody shootout meant that the days of an easily accessible president were gone. The threat of violence would force him to step away from the people who had elected him, toward the well-armed safety of the agents. It's T-4, 4 days until the president arrives. The Secret Service advance team sets up a command center in an undisclosed hotel suite. The room is completely transformed. The beds are removed. Secure phones are brought in. There will be no room service, and the room will not be cleaned.
We'll just play with it. Right. You can make almost. We'll tweak it. Thank you.
The site where the president will give his speech is a vast arena. Site Advance Agent Lawrence Tucker and Supervisor Tom McCarthy go over the security plans.
We're looking at approximately between 13 and 14,000 people in here on the ground level and on up.
Only through the eyes of a Secret Service agent can an empty arena seem so ominous. A monster at 74,000 square feet. Where could the threat come from?
So where is that?
assailants could slip in through any of the 130 entrances, pose as a graduate in any of the 14,000 seats.
The mags are going to be set up on the far end?
The mags will be set up on this end, sir.
A sniper could hide in the catwalks above or in air ducts in the floor below.
5 or 6 posts on top and 2 on the catwalk.
Potted plants could conceal bombs. So could seat pads on the 850 chairs on the floor. The task is daunting.
Sounds good.
Agent Lawrence Tucker, or LT, must do everything in his power to ensure that this arena doesn't become the place where the president is attacked. LT is a member of the Presidential Protective Division, or PPD, a group of agents who have risen through the ranks and earned the assignment to protect the president. They stand at the president's shoulder. They are the shield. It's an honor, but a potentially deadly one. The area around the president is known in the business as the kill zone. Back at the command center, LT pinpoints and eliminates site threats. But protecting the president is far bigger than securing any one event. In Washington, a global threat analysis is always underway.
This is the threat on the president's life. He's dead, okay?
I want to blow up the White House and the Capitol building.
At headquarters, specialists assess the constant stream of threats made against the president. The Secret Service won't say how many threats are made, only that every threat is investigated.
Yes. If I'm woken up at 3:30 in the morning again, I'll assassinate President Clinton.
These recordings usually come from the agency's intelligence division, collected from calls into the White House, local police, and radio and television stations.
Well, most of the time the recordings come in, there's a lot of noise on it. So first we try and remove the noise as much as possible without damaging the voice.
And I'm going to blow up the president and I'm going to kill him. So you guys can have a fun time there because we're going to kill him.
Schwartz listens for features in the caller's voice, accent, dialect, or speech defects.
There because we're going to kill him.
Any nuance that may help to set the voice apart and identify it.
I want to blow up the White House and the Capitol building.
Who is threatening the president?
He's dead, okay?
The answer is never simple.
History has shown us that assassins come in all shapes and forms. We've had them from young men all the way to women that were grandmothers who have actually made attempts to assassinate our protectees. So every threat is taken very seriously.
Protecting the president has always been difficult. In 2001, events conspired to dramatically increase the danger.
September 11th started as a pretty routine day for me. I got in about 7 o'clock and I got a call from the duty desk and they were briefing me that we were getting intelligence that there was a potential hijacking. So we activated the crisis center.
Deep inside headquarters in a top secret room, managers and directors began to assess the nature of the hijacking.
The first plane hit, I believe, the north towers of the World Trade Center at about 8:45.
I thought and hoped that it was an accident, but when the second one hit, we knew that it wasn't.
To some agents, it seemed that someone was trying to decapitate the U.S. government.
We activated our continuity of government plan and we deployed agents to locate and remain with anyone in the line of succession.
Secret Service protection now extended to the Speaker of the House, the President pro tempore of the Senate, and the Secretary of State.
We got calls that there appeared to be a plane headed for the White House. And we had immediately called the Vice President's detail.
There was no time for chit-chat, no time for, will you come with us? I mean, they just took him.
Vice President Cheney said, my feet never touched the floor.
Meanwhile, the president wanted to get back to Washington.
We agreed that coming back to Washington was not a good decision. So there was discussion on Air Force One between the agent in charge, the president, the vice president, the director of the Secret Service was involved in several conversations, and a national security advisor as to what actions would take place.
With With Washington and New York in a state of chaos, the Secret Service put the president aboard Air Force One, the one place where they controlled all the variables.
And we were watching on television as the towers collapsed.
That was probably the most difficult time we had. There were a lot of questions everybody had and we didn't have answers to.
Well, I think since 9/11, the Secret Service may be more careful about the president even than before.
The Secret Service emerged from 9/11 confronting an inescapable truth. Terrorism had redefined the threat spectrum.
It's probably changed the stress level by twofold. The very violent and random attacks that are brought on by terrorism are something that the Secret Service is extremely concerned about.
The presidential motorcade is on the move. A trip to an event in town. They've driven the route hundreds of times. The bubble advances through familiar territory. But familiar never means risk-free. Welcome to Beltsville, Maryland, training grounds for the Secret Service. Here, agents and officers learn to handle disasters by experiencing them again and again. Car bombs, snipers, gas and chemical attacks. A chilling variety of assassination attempts are launched against the agents in training.
There may be instincts that all of us are born with to move away from danger versus moving toward it. One of the things that the Secret Service does through its training programs is take that out of you. You're hearing shots go off, shots be fired, and you're still responding to the problem, not running away from it.
The culture is not the biggest and the strongest that come to the table. It's the swiftest and the smartest that come to the table.
Every agent learns how to take down a potential assassin, how to fall out of a moving car, to treat for shock and for bullet wounds.
Let's go. Muzzle straight up, 2 hands on the weapon.
For agents who work closest to a protectee, training is even more intense and demanding. Their standard weapon is a .357 semi-automatic pistol.
Shooting side.
The Secret Service requires each agent to qualify with a firearm every month. Because they may be called upon to open fire in a crowd or from a moving vehicle, agents must learn rapid, accurate firing. And the training never stops. Agents on presidential details must return to sharpen their skills 2 weeks out of every 8.
Worthy of trust and confidence, commitment and dedication, attention to detail. And that is instilled from the first day that an agent becomes a member of the organization. You plan for the unexpected because you only get one shot. Either you're trusted or you're not.
In an undisclosed location, Agent Ken Valentine cleans and polishes the president's car. This James Bond invention is affectionately known as the Beast.
I'll tell you that the car has 2 limitations as far as we're concerned. It doesn't fly and it doesn't float.
The agents protect information about the car with the same tenacity that they protect the president.
I'm not at liberty to discuss the security measures other than to say that it's a very capable vehicle.
The details of the Beast may be classified, but like other armored cars, it probably features a remote starter with bomb detector, a self-healing fuel tank, supplemental oxygen, and wheel inserts that allow the limo to drive even when the tires are shot out. One thing is clear. Any car with windows as thick as phone books and doors that weigh hundreds of pounds, is not like any other car in the world. But the Beast is more than an armored car. It is the response to a nightmare, an event that shook the world and changed the Secret Service forever.
President Kennedy loved people, loved to be around people. We had gone from President Eisenhower, who was a retired general, to a former senator who was very free and wanted to do things that we were not used to having him do.
November 1963. President and Mrs. Kennedy are in Texas to rally support for the next presidential election. Their 2-day trip includes a motorcade through Dallas. Clint Hill is assigned to protect Mrs. Kennedy. He is stationed on the runners of the follow-up car, directly behind the presidential limousine.
Along the way, there were large crowds. We stopped a couple times to permit the people to shake hands with the president. When we got into the central part of Dallas, the crowds were larger. As we proceeded down through the center of Dallas, on occasion I would move from the follow-up car up to the back of the presidential limousine. Shortly after we got into that turn and started on that street, I heard a sound. I turned to see what was happening. I knew something was wrong. I saw President Kennedy grab at his throat. Before I could get to the presidential limousine, another shot had been fired and hit President Kennedy in the head. About that time, I reached the back of the limousine and tried to get on. I had to run 3 or 4 more steps before I could get up. By that time, Mrs. Kennedy had come out onto the trunk and was seeing, it appeared to me to be searching for something or trying to retrieve something. But I got up on the back of the car and placed her back in the seat. The president at that time, his slipped down into her lap, and I could see the back of his head, and there was a gaping hole above his right ear, about the size of my palm. And there was white brain matter and red blood throughout the entire car. The car jolted forward, and we sped off to Parkland Hospital.
As a stunned nation struggled with the enormous tragedy of a young president's murder, the Secret Service couldn't stop to mourn. They quickly moved to protect the new president. But the assassination shook the organization to its base and left the agents on the detail devastated.
It was our responsibility to protect the president, and we failed to do so. Anytime that you have a job to do and you don't do it, you've failed.
You know, if we had our way, we would probably bring the president out once a year in a bulletproof capsule and show everybody that he's alive and then take him back into the White House. If the staff had their way, he'd be out shaking hands with the public on a day-to-day basis.
What happens when politics vies with protection? Negotiation. Larry Cockle led the presidential detail for Bill Clinton.
He remarked once that of all the people that he interacted with and of all the authority and power of the president, that the Secret Service was the only entity around him that would tell him no. So I don't think there was ever an instance where I overruled the president, but I found a way to make him see my point.
Sometimes the agent simply has to make a dangerous situation work.
The president, he wanted to go to Bangladesh and Pakistan, which for all intents and purposes would have been going into Al-Qaeda's backyard. I had to actually prepare to try to talk him out of going, but at the same time, I had to prepare to take him there in the event that he wasn't going to take my advice.
We went down to Cartagena when a lot of people were saying, don't go down there. The drug warlords are out of control at Cartagena in Colombia. And I said, we got the Secret Service. I'm not going to worry about that.
Now, the president, more than any other time, is in a cocoon. The problem of a president being more and more isolated from mainstream America and from the way people live and the way they think is a problem that eventually we may come to regret in the sense that it went too far. It's hard to say that any measure to keep a president safe goes too far, but just think about it.
Preparation for that high-stakes game has reached a dramatic stage at the Baton Rouge airport. It's T-2 and counting. 2 days until the president arrives, and the invasion has begun. The Secret Service arrives in force. 2 Air Force C-141 cargo planes packed with tons of equipment and enough manpower to staff a small army have landed. The scope of presidential protection is unlike anything else. But one other person whose protection approaches this level is the presidential candidate. Candidates had always lived outside the bubble until a deadly attack in 1968.
American troops and American Marines.
June 5th, 1968. Presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy has just pulled off a dramatic primary victory in California. As he leaves the hotel through a jubilant, uncontrolled crowd, a Palestinian student, Sirhan Sirhan, steps forward and fires 7 shots at point-blank range. It's the first time in United States history that a presidential candidate is gunned down on the campaign trail. Today, the Secret Service automatically protects the candidate 120 days before the election. For candidate John Kerry, it's his first time inside the protective bubble.
You don't notice it except if you have to just walk to the drugstore or go do something totally normal. It's, I guess, just part of the business. It does feel a little bit restrictive, but you know that they're there because it's a dangerous world and they're there to protect you.
The whole point of the campaign for any candidate is to connect with the crowd. The agents have to balance the candidate's desire to be in the crowd with the safety measures needed to keep him alive. During his speech, Kerry appears to be out in the open with no visible barrier, but the platform is surrounded by bulletproof armor. What the crowd sees is a campaign banner. Agents take positions at the sides of the stage, and a Suburban stands by to whisk Kerry away if there's trouble. But the candidate can't worry about trouble. He has to work the crowd, and often the only thing between him and the crowd is the agent.
Every protectee is different. They have their own mannerisms and expectations, and we're able to adapt to those and adapt the security methodology around that.
In the months leading up to the election, the Secret Service must adapt to Kerry's style, and Kerry must learn to live in the shadow of protection.
I spend a lot of time on rope lines. I talk to people. I dive into the crowd. If you want to meet with people and you want to go out and get in a room and have them ask you questions, there's every way in the world to do it. I do it every day.
If the candidate is elected to office, he must take what comes with it, and so does his family.
When Dad became president in August, all of a sudden, like, boom, our life changed overnight. And I remember the first moment the head of my detail came up to me, and He came up and he said, listen, I know this is a big transformation for you. We're not here to be your parents. We're not here to tell you what to do, what not to do. We're here to make sure you don't get kidnapped, shot, killed, held for ransom.
Mrs. Clinton received numerous death threats. We had some person who basically was, I think, stalking Chelsea Clinton. These incidents were never reported and never talked about, and we never let this information out. It was not our job to discuss it.
There were special times when the president and Chelsea were together, when it was really important that Chelsea not experience this very heavy security presence. So those times we would give him space.
They were really good about trying to be flexible. Sometimes Chelsea and I would walk downtown in Washington and go to a bookstore or something like that. But I tried to give them enough notice so that they could prepare. I felt that on occasion, giving into the security requirements did isolate me from the public.
There are times when life inside the bubble is claustrophobic.
There's not a whole lot of privacy for a president or a first lady.
You see them in every situation they're in. You see them when they get up in the morning, when they go to bed at night. You see them when they're happy, you see them when they're sad. So you see them under every situation possible.
People say, well, how can you live that way with somebody at your front door all the time? Or you walk out to go for a short walk and there's a Secret Service person.
It can be annoying from time to time to have people following you literally every step during the day. Presidents are no different than anyone else. They simply need their space, and you try to give them that.
There are only a few rooms in the White House where the president and his family can be truly alone. But so much proximity means very little privacy. The agent must be absolutely trustworthy. Discretion is essential.
I don't know about other first families, but I know that Barbara and I talk very frankly in front of them. Always did and always will, because we have total trust in their professionalism, in their discipline. But they know a lot of secrets about our own family, personal, intimate stuff about our kids and grandchildren and all of that.
The Secret Service is in the front seat of the car when the president's riding with people, talking about anything from national security to sensitive political matters to, personal family matters.
What you hear and what you see, if they're of a personal nature, if they're of a national security nature, has to stay with you.
In 1998, the issue of agent confidentiality was put to the test. Independent counsel Ken Starr subpoenaed several Secret Service agents and officers, including lead agent Larry Cockle, to question him about President Clinton's affair.
We internally in the organization didn't want to be perceived as flies on the wall. I've been present when sensitive family issues were discussed. And as much as possible, I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to know. I felt awkward being present, but I knew my presence was compelled by law.
The Secret Service contended that requiring testimony from their agents and officers about the very people they protected compromised the essential trust necessary to keep them safe.
We felt very strongly that our agents shouldn't have been summoned to testify in that grand jury. We still don't think it's correct. We argued that all the way to the Supreme Court.
But the Supreme Court ruled that the Secret Service was not immune to subpoena power, and ultimately, Agent Larry Cockle and the others were compelled to testify. It was one of the few times in history that the Secret Service was forced to violate the unwritten code of confidentiality that is their trademark. A difficult job just got tougher.
It was a tough time for the Secret Service. We all felt that it's awkward to compel anyone to be subjected to a set of circumstances and then use it against them.
Game day. T-minus 5 hours before the president lands. At 4 a.m., the Secret Service arrives at the arena. LSU may own the building, but today it belongs to the Secret Service.
You're gonna be in a row, man.
LT assigns each agent a specific post, to guard an entrance, to guard the stage, even to mix into the crowd.
Mic check, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
At T-minus 3 hours, the Secret Service hold on the arena begins to tighten.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
They now execute a comprehensive search for bombs and weapons, called a sweep.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
They sweep every plant, every band instrument, and all 14,000 seats. T-minus 2 hours. Once the building is swept, it's sealed off. No one will be allowed in without going through a metal detector first. Magnetometers and several officers guard each of the entrances. Tactical control of the building is theirs, for now. At the Baton Rouge airport, it's T-minus 90 minutes. The agents are busy taking control of this real estate, too. The president's private fuel supply is standing by. The Secret Service choreographs the movements of the press, the motorcade, well-wishers, and even the president himself.
We're all going to come in here. The press is going to...
At T-minus 5 minutes, the Baton Rouge airport is temporarily closed. Only Air Force One is clear to approach. On the ground, anything or anyone that moves will get immediate attention from the counter-sniper teams. Their measures may seem extreme, but the agents know that history has a violent way of repeating itself.
It was a very routine trip from the White House to the Washington Hilton Hotel. The president gave a speech to the Building Trades Union. He left about 2:27 p.m. that day, and we were walking toward the car.
When the president came out of the door and started to his limousine, and some of us began to shout at him.
Remember the lady behind me saying, "Mr. Reagan, Mr. President."
President Reagan!
And just about 6 or 7 feet from the open door, I heard 2 quick shots and then 4 more. The first 2 shots hit Mr. Brady and Officer Delahanty, and the third one hit McCarthy because we're pushing the president behind McCarthy. He didn't let me down, and he stood up there and took it.
Give me a squat, Park! Move back into the car!
What I remember vividly is Parks grabbing the president, taking his head, carefully, quickly putting it down and pushing him into the limo.
As we know now, a bullet struck the rim of the door, ricocheted into President Reagan. But at that moment, no one knew that.
As the limo speeds toward the White House, Agent Jerry Parr searches President Reagan for gunshot wounds. Everything looks okay until the president starts spitting up bright, frothy blood. In that instant, Parr makes the decision of his life.
I knew from my training that this meant some kind of a lung injury, and I just said, we got to take him to the hospital.
Parr orders the limo to change direction, and it races toward the hospital.
President Reagan walked a few steps in the emergency room and collapsed and almost died.
I don't play up myself on this simply because Tim McCarthy made a heroic gesture in standing up. Everybody's shot down, and McCarthy's the only one standing up.
Agent Tim McCarthy did what every agent hopes he'll never have to do. Using his body as a shield, he turned into the line of fire. He took a bullet for the president.
When the shots rang out, agents are trained to cover and evacuate. And cover means cover with your own body. It's a counter-instinctive movement. It's muscle memory. And it's a moment, when you really think about it deeply, that it's where history and destiny hang in the balance. It's where all your training and truth come together in that one moment.
"9:15 a.m., 0 hour. The enormous preparation is over. It's game on.
Any pagers, keys, cell phones, electronic devices, bags, and purses, please place them here on the table.
At the arena, the once-in-a-lifetime day for the graduates and their families begins with a thorough search. The president exits Air Force One as the security rolls out ahead of him. Secret Service agents and officers are literally everywhere. If they do their job well, the heavy security will feel invisible. The graduation will take center stage. The motorcade prepares to pull out. One of these vehicles carries a heavily armed counter-assault team, ready to repel any attack. The Secret Service is ready for any threat on the road ahead. The beast arrives, right on schedule, to the minute. Supervising Agent Tom McCarthy takes his final position on stage. He'll be the agent closest to the president.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
University presents you the honorary degree Doctor of Science.
Thank you all very much. I want to thank you for the warm welcome. I'm honored to be with you on graduation day. I speak with some authority here. I've seen how things can work out pretty well for a C student.
While the president gives his speech, the agents live in a parallel world, a world of intense vigilance. Each agent plays a role in securing the 360-degree safety zone. They scan for the individual who does not fit in, who is doing something different.
We will defend the freedom and security of this nation, whatever it takes.
As the president exits the stage, he veers off course and off the plan. It is the one unchoreographed moment of his visit. Then the ranks close, and he is in the cocoon again and on his way back to the airport. But for the agents, it still isn't over. On the tarmac, a crowd of 300 wait to see the president off. They look like a spontaneous group, but they are not. They have all been invited and screened.
When you stop and think about all the things that have to occur to keep that well-oiled machine running, the responsibility, the dedication, the many sacrifices that people make day in and day out, it's just truly incredible.
For the Secret Service, it was a good day. Nothing happened.
The average agent is not going to go on to riches and fame and glory, having spent a good number of years of their lives putting their life on the line. Their reward is going to be basically the understanding they've done an important job for all of us in this country. They've done the job well. They can be proud of that. We should honor them. But they're not going to get rich. They're not going to be famous. They're just going to be ordinary Americans.
The visit has involved thousands of man-hours, weeks of coordination, hundreds of people, tons of equipment, and no small amount of stress. The president has been on the ground for 80 minutes. The Secret Service will move on, advancing the next locations, keeping the web of protection spun out ahead of the president so he can keep his public persona, so he can do his job.
It was an incredible experience. It was an opportunity, it was an honor. Of all the things that I could have chosen to pursue in my life, I'm glad I had the opportunity to serve in the Secret Service. The things that I've witnessed as a part of history have been incredible. I wouldn't change it. I'd do it again.